A couple of years ago, I was in San Diego with a friend with a video camera, and as we walked around the town, I recorded a series of videos of business buying tips. And this is a compilation video where we've edited together 30, 40, 50 of these videos into one long video. So all those tips, tricks and strategies about how to buy a business successfully are all in one place. And at the same time, you can enjoy the sights and the sounds of San Diego in the background. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, this is Jonathan J from the Dealmakers Academy with some tips on buying businesses based upon experience, all the things that I've done, all the things that I know have worked. I've made plenty of mistakes, so I know the things that don't work as well. And one of the things you must do when you're meeting a seller is acknowledge their position, is to understand where they're coming from. So when they tell you that they find the business very stressful and they're working incredibly long hours, you acknowledge that. You say, you know what, I understand. If I was in your position, I'd feel the same way too. Rather than saying, well, why are you stressed? There's nothing stressful about this. You should see my business, or whatever. You don't want to disagree. What you want to do is agree, is to acknowledge and say, well, look, maybe us putting together a transaction is a way of solving that situation. Maybe they tell you they'd like to spend more time at home. Say, you know what, I don't blame you. I'd want to spend more time at home as well if I had children or grandchildren or family or whatever it might be. So you acknowledge their position, because when you acknowledge their position, you move metaphorically round to their side of the table. So now you're shoulder to shoulder doing a deal together rather than adversaries on opposite sides of the table. Let me give you a great tip when negotiating. This is probably the biggest and the strongest negotiating tip that I can give you. And the tip is this: you must always be prepared to walk away. You must always be prepared to say, you know what, I'm not sure if this deal's going to work for me. I wish you the very best of luck. It's not right for me. And it's almost a little bit like Columbo. You know how Columbo in the TV show, he would have his conversation, he'd walk away, but he'd stop at the door and he'd turn around and say something, or the other person would say something. But it's that pause that is very, very uncomfortable. And when someone sees you walk away, their negotiating position crumbles. Now, the way you walk away with confidence is because you've got several deals on the go at any one time. And if one of them isn't right for you, you can walk away. So, big negotiating tip here. Walking away is incredibly powerful. Now, it takes courage to do it, but if you've got the self-confidence, you can do it. So I'm going to give you a great tip in negotiation that's going to strengthen your position and is going to elevate your professionalism in the eyes of the buyer. And this is the tip. You never have one deal happening at any one time. You have multiple deals. And when you're sitting with your seller, you talk about the other deals that you're doing. You say, I'm very sorry that I didn't get back to you immediately when you sent me that email last week, because we've got another deal going down that's become a little bit time consuming. Or you say, look, I'm with you till 3 o'clock. I've got another meeting the other side of town at 4 o'clock with another business that I'm looking at buying. So there's always other deals that you're doing. Now, psychologically, this has an effect on people because they realize that you could actually put your money, your time, your expertise, your skills into other businesses. They are not the only player in town. You do not need them because, quite frankly, if they don't like the deal that you're offering, you don't mind because you've got other things. You aren't reliant upon them saying yes, and that's a very powerful position for you to be in. Today's tip is all about de-risking an acquisition. And the best way to de-risk an acquisition is to structure the payments in such a way that you're not risking all of your money up front on what to some degree is a bit of an unknown quantity. Despite the due diligence, there are always surprises. However, if you de-risk the acquisition by structuring the payments using something called deferred consideration, so you defer the payments over a period of time, what happens is that if some skeletons are in the closet, if there are some problems that come out of the woodwork, then you have the right of set-off. You can make a warranty claim, you can set off payments that are owed against the cost of the problem that you have encountered. So, big tip here. De-risk the acquisition process by using deferred consideration. Welcome to today's tip, which is all about finding out from the seller whether there are any pressing creditors. So a pressing creditor is someone that the seller owes money to, who is demanding payment, and it's getting serious. They've been fobbed off for a while, and it's now got to the point where payment needs to be made. And usually it's some HMRC tax issue. They haven't paid their VAT. They've gotten away with it for a few weeks, maybe a few months, and the pressure is building up. Now, Why do you want to know this? You want to know this because that is part of your leverage in a negotiation. You want to find out whether by solving that one problem, you make all their pain go away. And there are ways to solve this problem after you've bought the business that don't involve spending your own money. But finding out if there are pressing creditors is a great question to ask, not on the phone, that's way too early, but when you've built rapport, when you've built a relationship, because it gives you the information and the knowledge that you need to be able to craft an offer that helps the seller get what they want. So one of these tips could be the thing that changes the deal in your favor. And today's tip is all about building a rapport with the seller. Now, some people go into a deal where they feel that the seller's one side of the table, the buyer's the other side of the table, and it's a combative situation, and it's who's going to win, who's going to come out on top. Well, don't forget, you've got to be that collaborative problem solver. And one way of building rapport is to find out what the seller does when they're not in the office. And this will give you some great clues as well. It will give you some things to talk about. You might well have some common interests that we can chat about. But actually, more importantly, you'll find out how much time they spend in the office. It's very, very interesting because quite often sellers tell you that they're not actually involved in the day-to-day running of their business. But when you actually find out what they do outside of the office, they say they don't do anything because they're in the office all the time. They actually contradict themselves. And by finding these things out, it gives you more power to your elbow when you are negotiating later on. And also, it lets you know if the seller isn't telling the truth about one thing, there might be other things that they're covering up as well. And when they say, look, you don't need me here, you know, well, actually, I do, and I need to factor in a salary to replace you. And sometimes sellers are so involved in their businesses, you need to factor in 2 salaries to cover the work that they do. So building rapport, asking questions, and ask them, what do they do when they're not at the office is a great question to ask. So today's tip is all about asking the right type of questions. And the right type of questions are open questions. They are questions where there isn't a yes or a no answer. They aren't binary questions. There are questions where the person is allowed to talk and to give you information. And remember, knowledge is power, so the more information someone gives you, the better the deal you can construct that helps them reach their outcome, but at the same time helps you reach your outcome of buying the business on the best possible terms. So open questions, for example, are just things like, well, look, if we were to do this deal, what do you think it would look like? Or if we were to work together to put this deal together, how long do you think it might take? Or if we were to do a deal together, how can I make sure that you're happy? Or if we were to do a deal, is it you that I need to satisfy, or is it your family? Is it you as your business partners? Who do I need to help achieve their goals in order for us to be successful at putting the time and effort into getting this deal over the line? So when you ask open questions, people open up and they tell you things they would never have told you if you asked a yes, no, binary question. And remember, knowledge is power. The more information you have, the more and the better you can construct a great deal for them and a great deal for you. Now, one of the challenges that some deal makers have is that they say they don't attract the right businesses. They get inquiries from businesses that want to sell, but they are the wrong businesses. They aren't the businesses that they're looking for. And I think I know the reason why. The reason why is because they don't know what they want. And because they don't know what they want, then their marketing and their word-of-mouth advertising is a little bit scattergun. And as a result, they get a random selection of people approaching them. Where if you're very clear on your sector, on your market, the size of business, the location of the business that you want to acquire, then you might get less deal opportunities come your way. But the ones that you do get are absolutely laser focused on what you want. So having a personal strategy, knowing what type of business you want to buy and the criteria that you're going to buy is very, very important. And that's a starting point really for everything else that you do in deal making. One thing that I really want to emphasize is the attitude that you need to go into a negotiation with. So the attitude with which you need to approach someone who's selling or thinking of selling their business. And the attitude that you need to have is that of a cooperative problem solver. So you're not going to go in there as the big shot or the Wolf of Wall Street guy. You're going to go in as a cooperative problem solver. So you want to find out what their pain is. You're going to find out what their problems are. You're going to find out what they desire, what they want to achieve, and you're going to help them achieve that outcome. So you're going in there to solve their problems. So you need to find out what the problems are. So you're going to go in to solve their problems and be a cooperative problem solver, where you together are going to work it out and make sure they get what they want and you get what you want, and everyone is happy with the deal. Today we're talking about buying businesses and talking to the seller and negotiating the deal, putting the deal together. And a great approach to this is to brainstorm ideas with the seller. So instead of you making a proposal and maybe they accept it or reject it, or they make a proposal and maybe you accept it or reject it, you work together to put together a deal that works for everyone. So you might say, well, look, let's brainstorm some ideas. Let's look at how this will work. What is it that's important to you? What are your must-haves, and what are the things that you would like to see happen? And let's work it out. So you are sitting, sometimes quite literally, on the same side of the table, working together to figure out what the best deal is for both parties. So brainstorming the outcome, saying, how do we achieve this? Look, I know this is important to you. I can't see how that's going to work. How do you see it working? It means that you construct the deal together, and when the seller has got buy-in to the deal because they helped you construct it, it's very hard for them later to say they don't like it because they have agreed it with you. So brainstorm the outcomes together. Do the deal together. Now, when you're in the buying position, when you're buying a business, sometimes you can get partway through a conversation about value and negotiating and how the deal is going to look like, and you get stuck, and you get to the point where you just can't seem to agree, and it becomes a bit uncomfortable, and you're not quite sure what to do next. And quite often my mastermind people say, I'm in this situation, Jonathan, and I got stuck, and what do I do next? Well, here's a great technique, and you won't read this in the book, you won't find this on websites. This is stuff you only learn from actually doing it or learn from someone who's done it. This is what you do. You change negotiators. So let's say we've got Chris, and Chris is the buyer, and Chris is buying a business, and he's talking to the seller, and he gets to the point where he's stuck. And Chris says, look, I know we've got a meeting scheduled for Friday, and I'm actually not sure whether I'm going to be free because I've got a meeting that's in the morning, and I don't want to be late. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send Sally along, and Sally is going to continue. Sally knows everything about the business. I've fully briefed her. She's on my team. So Sally's going to come along, and Sally's going to have that meeting with you on Friday. So Sally's obviously briefed in the situation and knows that you've got stuck and you're starting to knock heads. So Sally comes along, breath of fresh air. You say, look, I understand there was a little bit of tension between you and Jonathan the other day. What's the issue? And they will tell Sally, because Sally's a fresh face at the negotiating table. And there is this feeling from the seller's perspective is they've got to rewind. They've got to really start things all over again, because Sally might say, would you bring me up to speed on where we are at the moment? I think I know, but I'd appreciate if you'd give me just 5 minutes of your time bringing me up to speed. So Sally unblocks the negotiation because you've brought a fresh face, a new face to the table. The tip today is all about deferring to a higher authority. Let me tell you what I mean. You always need to have a business partner. Now, your business partner might be your life partner, it might be a colleague, it might be a fellow deal maker, but deferring to a higher authority gives you the edge in every negotiation, because if you hear something that you don't like, you don't have to say no to it. You say, well, I have to check with my partner, and my partner's decision on this will be final. So you go away, you come back, and you say, my partner unfortunately doesn't agree. He's not happy with this. He's going to say no to it. I understand where you're coming from. He doesn't get it, and he says no. So unfortunately, if we can't get past this point, no deal is going to happen. So very, very important, always defer to a higher authority. It could be your business partner, it could be your lawyer, it could be your accountant, but someone who can say no, someone who can play the bad cop when you are always the good cop. Today's top tip is all about developing trust, and developing trust by listening. Now, business owners love to be listened to, simply because there's probably a lot of people in their life who don't listen to them. And when you become the person who listens to them, then you will develop a bond and a rapport and a trust that they probably will not achieve with someone else. So what you need to do is ask questions and then sit back and listen to the answer. And sometimes when you meet a seller, they spend the first half hour telling you their life story, sometimes longer, telling you their life story. Just listen. Do them the courtesy of listening. What you will get in return is a trust and a rapport, which means that you will get a deal done. It means that when there are problems and issues, and there always are little bumps in the road in a deal, because you've got that rapport, you'll be able to overcome those bumps and get yourself to a successful outcome. So, key tip for today, build trust through listening. Today we're talking about the negotiation part, the early stages where we are talking to a seller about their business and we're understanding the numbers, and we're getting to the point maybe where we're talking about value and we're talking about what we're going to pay and how we're going to structure a deal. And it's very, very tempting sometimes these days to skip physical face-to-face meetings and try and do things on Skype or over the phone. And I would say avoid it. When you get to the part of talking about money, talking about valuations, talking about deal structure, don't do it on the phone, don't do it on Skype. You need to be sitting there face-to-face with someone, because everyone will put more effort into a face-to-face meeting. And on the telephone, things can be misunderstood. On Skype, you get a bad signal, you get a bad Wi-Fi, and you want to be able to hear everything. You want to be in the room. You want to see who else is in the room. Who knows that there could be someone that you can't see who's passing notes to your seller and telling them what to say. You want to be there physically present. So, top tip, you never negotiate on the phone. You always negotiate and discuss deals face-to-face. You've got to be in the same room as each other, even if it takes a little bit more effort to get there. It's absolutely worth it. Today's tip is actually a warning. It's a warning not to do something that you might be tempted to do. The warning is this. Quite often when a seller tells you what they think their business is worth, it becomes a sort of a reaction of saying, I don't agree with you, that's just nonsense, how could it be worth this, this is the problem here, you've got this here, you're not making any profit, how on earth can you put that, and it starts to become an argument. The message is, the tip is, don't argue about value. All you do is just say, okay, that's interesting, explain to me, would you, help me understand how you reached that valuation. Did you reach that valuation, or did someone do it for you? And when you find out who else did it, you want to get that information. What did they base this valuation on? When you agreed this valuation with your accountant, what did you agree was the basis of the valuation? So it's not an argument. You mustn't get into knocking heads, even if you feel that you're 100% right and they're 100% wrong. It's not great. It will not end well. So today's top tip is, don't argue over valuation. Today's tip is all about money and what to do when a seller asks you what you're prepared to pay or to put in an offer. And the secret is, you don't say anything. The worst thing you can do is to be the first person to talk about money. You need to let the seller talk about money first. Now, some sellers get very cagey and they don't want to be the first person to speak, and they just go quiet and they say, you need to put in an offer. This is how you approach it. You say, well, if I was buying your house, I wouldn't ask you to, I wouldn't be putting the price forward, you'd be putting the price forward. If I go into a shop, the prices are on everything, I know how much it costs. It's the same with the business. You need to tell me what you want, and then we'll work from there. So tip number one, do not ever be the first person to talk about the money. Today's tip is, don't believe everything you hear. And it is so easy and so tempting to believe what a seller tells you and take it at face value. And quite often, sellers can be wily. They can tell you things that really just aren't true. For example, they might say to you that there's lots of people interested, and then you discover that your adrenaline starts to spike and you start getting into a competitive situation, and the value starts to go up and you want it more because other people want it. In actual fact, you're bidding against yourself. There isn't anyone else interested. And another thing that sellers often tell you is that they're in no hurry, they can take all the time in the world, but actually they want to get a deal done really, really quickly. So the key message here is, don't believe everything that you're told. What you want to do is do your own due diligence, your own research, and you need to spend enough time with the seller to uncover what their true motivations are. Because quite often they'll tell you at the beginning, oh, we're in no hurry, it's no big deal. A few days later, you have exactly the same conversation, but they tell you they need to do it by Christmas, they need to do it by Easter, they need to do it because they've got the plane ticket booked to Barbados, they need to be on the flight. So, key message here, top tip, don't believe everything that you hear. Now, quite often during a discussion with a business owner, a negotiation with a business owner, they'll ask you to do things for them. So they'll say, well, can you maybe accelerate the payments? Can you give me some more money up front? Can you whatever it might be. Now, you might be willing to do that, but you should never ever agree to do anything without them giving something in return. So you say, well, look, I could do that for you. It might be possible. Remember, you always defer to a higher authority, so it might be possible. I have to check with my business partner, or check with my accountant, or check with my lawyer. But if we do agree to that, then I would need something in return, because when you've been saying this, and this, well, we need to look at that area of the contract, because I don't think we'd be happy with that. So if you're prepared to do that, maybe we're prepared to do this. So every concession that you make is contingent upon them doing something in return. Sometimes it's very easy to put into an email an offer, or to suggest how a deal is structured in an email, and as soon as you put it in writing, there is some sense that you are committed, and sometimes you might even find yourself legally committed to a path that later on you do not want to go down. So you need to make sure that every single email has in the subject line, subject to contract and due diligence. That's the phrase, subject to contract and due diligence, which means that what you're putting in the email doesn't mean anything, because it is subject to the contract and it's subject to the due diligence, which at this stage you haven't started undertaking. You don't really yet know the true value of what it is that you're buying. So subject to contract and due diligence protects you from someone saying, but in that email on the 5th of March you said this, and this. Now today I want to talk to you about why it's very important to get a business broker, if there's one involved in the deal, on side. And I think it's very important to get the business broker on side, because they can help nudge the seller in the right direction. A little bit like a good estate agent, in that they want to make the deal happen. So if you reach a sticking point, in many cases the broker can be on your side as much as they can be on the seller's side. In fact, really, they're on their own side, because they want to get paid a success fee on the deal completing. So being on good terms with the broker, rather than in a argumentative or a combative situation, is really, really important. So make sure you build rapport with the broker as well as build rapport with the seller, and that winning combination can help you get your deal over the line. And today, a very, very simple tip, but I know a lot of deal makers don't do this, and this is something that you really must do, and that is you need to have a business card. You need to have a good old-fashioned business card, and you need to have them with you at all times, and you need to have them in your pocket, and you need to be able to swap business cards, not just give them out, but you need to receive them as well. And one little tip when you receive a business card, what I always do is I take a pen and I make a note on the card, something about that person, so that when I get back to my hotel room, when I get back home, I know who it is I've been talking to, because sometimes it can get really confusing when you've got half a dozen cards and you don't know who's who. So really good tip, but an old-fashioned tip perhaps, is have a business card, swap business cards, keep your business cards safe, because you never know when you might meet someone who you could be doing a deal with. Now, for many years, I wrote books on marketing and sales and advised companies on growing their business using marketing like Google and Facebook to grow their companies. Now, there is a plus side and there's a downside. The plus side is that marketing is something that every company should be doing if they want to grow. The downside is it can be a slow process. And sometimes you feel like you're taking one step forward and two steps backwards, which means that you acquire a customer or two customers today, you lose another customer tomorrow, you acquire another customer, you lose a customer, and as a result, you never seem to move forward as fast as you really want to. They're little tiny bunny hops of growth, but why don't you take those bunny hops of growth and turn them into kangaroo leaps, whereby buying a competitor, you suddenly grow your business by 200 customers, 300 customers, 500 customers, 1,000 customers overnight. And that sort of growth propels you into the big time. So I advise every single one of our clients is to grow your business via acquisition. And today I'm going to tell you about a very important part of the contractual process which you may not have thought about before. It's called heads of terms. Now, heads of terms is the pre-contract, is the contract before the contract. It's subject to the final contract, but basically what it means is that we're going to get all the things that we as two commercial people, you know, you're the seller and I'm the buyer. This is what we've agreed, and this is what we're going to put in writing. And what we're doing this for is to make sure that we are both quite literally on the same page, so that later on when we get to the point where we are appointing lawyers and we are spending money, we're not going to be wasting time by someone saying, oh no, I never agreed that. The heads of terms gets everything out in the open, and that's where you uncover any problems or unexpected things nice and early before you start incurring fees. So remember, heads of terms, very, very important part of the process. And a question I'm often asked is, how do brokers charge? How do they charge for their services when they sell a business? Well, there's generally 3 or 4 categories of brokers. Some charge an upfront fee, and that's it. Some charge an upfront fee and then a success fee, which might be 3, 5, 7% of the sale value. Some charge a success fee only, and some do some other hybrid where the success fee is on a ratchet, where the more they get for your business, if you're the person selling the business, the more they get for the business, the higher the value, the more they get paid, either typically on a percentage basis. So understanding the psychology of that particular broker is really, really important, and understanding why and how they priced that deal is really important too. So having market information, market knowledge about brokers and how they structure their deals is really important when it comes to negotiating the deal. Because remember, if you're doing this through a broker, we want the broker to be happy too, because they will help you get the deal over the line. So we want a happy seller, a happy broker, and as a result, you become a happy buyer. So here is a great question for you to ask. Not the first contact with the seller, but the second contact with the seller. You say, oh, by the way, may I ask who your advisors are? By the way, may I ask who your advisors are? And advisors mean your accountant, typically just your accountant and just your lawyer. Most business acquisitions, they're the 2 most important people, the accountant and the lawyer. May I ask who your advisors are? And if they look at each other, if there's 2 people sitting there, or they look down at their shoes, they're not quite sure what to say, they don't have an accountant that they've instructed, they don't have a lawyer that they've instructed, the question you need to ask yourself is, how serious are they about selling? What you really want to hear is to say, well, we haven't instructed them yet, but the accountant will be this person, the lawyer will be this person, or better still, we haven't instructed our lawyer, we haven't instructed our accountant, and that means that they have mentally moved along the line a little bit further, and as a result, you're going to move to a deal a lot faster because they are acting like professionals, and that is always going to help your deal. I get asked a question a lot of times, which is, how do I approach a competitor with a view to buying them? Well, this is how you do it. You arrange to meet your competitor, and if there's a good relationship already, this is very, very easy to set up. If there isn't such a great relationship, then you might say, look, I realize we've had our differences in the past, but I'd like to get things back on an even keel, on a good footing, and I'd like to buy you coffee, just catch up and see how we can work together in the future. And then when you're sitting down having coffee, and that's all you say to get to that stage, so you're going to take this stage by stage. We're now at the coffee stage. At the coffee stage, you ask them about their business, you disclose some information about your business, and you start to build a rapport so that both sides relax. And a great phrase to use, and you can use this too, is, you know something, you've got a pretty good business there, and it looks like we're competing with each other, but in actual fact, we serve different ends of the market. You're at the top end, I'm in the middle end, and, you know, I wondered, you know, it just occurred to me, what would our businesses look like if we combined our balance sheets, if we merged our 2 businesses together? You know, we'd have a real powerhouse, we'd own this market. And quite often, the person that you're talking to, either immediately or at some point in a further discussion, says, you know something, I'm not so keen about merging our businesses. Have you ever thought about buying our business? And that's when you say, well, really? Is that something that you would consider? Because if you would consider it, then I'd consider it as well. So the way to approach a competitor is a very slow process, is a patient process where you take it step by step to the point where you can have this conversation as if it is their idea rather than yours, and that's a really key distinction. Let me give you a top tip today on what to say when someone asks you for proof of funds. Now, typically this happens if you're speaking to a broker or some sort of business transfer agent. They will, in the very early conversation, they will ask you for proof of funds. Now, of course, you would be a fool to show someone your bank balance or to show your hand. You don't want to do that because it weakens your negotiating position. Now, we can't blame the poor broker because probably the person that you're speaking to on the phone is reasonably junior. They're the first level of screening at the brokerage, and as a result they've been given a script to follow, and one of those questions is, do you have proof of funding? Well, the answer is, well, I don't really know what we're funding yet, so how can I give you proof? And this is what you would be saying. You'd be saying, I work with other investors, I work with private individuals, high net worth individuals, and funding is always available if the numbers stack up. At this early stage, I don't even know what the numbers are. So let's find out what the numbers are, let's find out what the numbers stack up, and if they stack up, funding is always available for the right deal. One great tip when you are negotiating with the seller of a business is to discover what their risk is. Let me tell you what I mean. Let's say you've got someone doing your financial due diligence for you, and they identify that there is actually a tax problem. Maybe VAT has been understated, maybe corporation tax hasn't been properly calculated, maybe they've done their own accounts, and there is a big problem in this business they are not aware of. But when you bring it to their attention, and don't forget that when something is written down, it becomes legitimate, and you've got a letter there from your accountant saying, look, this is the tax problem, this is the liability, this is the challenge, and that money is due to the Inland Revenue, to HMRC right now, you are now helping them by making them realize they've got a problem. So if the deal doesn't happen, at least they've got the problem, they know there's a problem to solve. If the deal does happen, you've got to factor you solving that problem on their behalf into the structure of the deal. And the tip is, if it's written down, it becomes legitimate. Let me say that again. If it's written down, it becomes legitimate. What do I mean by that? Well, typically when you're talking to a seller, they will tell you about the business and the assets of the business, and they'll put a value against those assets. They'll say, well, we've got the trucks that are worth this amount, we've got the building that's worth this amount, the machinery that's worth this amount. And they would be very bullish about those values, and typically the reason they're bullish about the values is because they know deep down they aren't worth as much as they're telling you that they're worth. Now, what you could do is you could get into an argument almost about what the value is. They say the value's here, you say the value's here, and you end up meeting in the middle, which is a really, really bad idea. What you want is a third-party valuer to value the assets, and typically valuers are quite prudent, they're quite conservative, which is in your favor, and they value the assets and they give you a written valuation. So when you meet the seller for the second or the third time and they tell you again about the assets, and you say, well, look, I've actually had a valuer value the assets, and this is what we know they are worth, and you have a printed letter or printed out the email. When it's written down, it becomes legitimate, and then the valuer is on your side, a professional is on your side, and as a result, it's very, very hard for them to negotiate and say that the value is worth more than what the valuer says. And of course, remember, on one of these other tips we've said, you walk away if the deal isn't right, and if they don't accept that valuation, you don't want to accept it either, simply because you will be overpaying. Very important tip today, which is a question that you would ask in the opening phone call. So you are speaking to the seller of a business, you're the potential buyer, and what you want to ask is this. You want to say something along the lines of, is the business currently on the market? And then you just sit back and you listen and you wait for the answer, and they might say, no, it isn't. They might say it's been on the market for 3 months, it's been on the market for 6 months. They might say it's with an agent or a broker, and this is all the information that you want to gather, because if it's on the market with an agent or a broker, why are they speaking to you? Why have they contacted you? You want to find out if it has been on the market, how long it's been on the market for. If it's been on the market for more than 6 months, there's probably a frustration building up. More than a year, they're probably so frustrated that if you can construct some sort of sensible deal, they will accept it. So finding out whether the business is on the market is a great tip to find out very early on in the conversation. It helps you in the negotiation process. Today's tip is all about knowledge. Knowledge is power, as they say, and the more knowledge you have about the business that is being sold to you, is being pitched to you, the stronger your negotiating position, the better the deal you will get. Now, what do I mean by knowledge? Well, first of all, look at the company's website, understand what it is that they are selling. So when you're talking to the seller, if they're saying something that's at cross purposes with what the website says, but why isn't the website being updated? Why do they say one thing, the website says another? Look at their accounts at Company's House. You find out what the accounts say. So if the seller's trying to tell you what a wonderful business it is, you know, because you've done your research, you've got the knowledge, you know that maybe it isn't so wonderful after all. Maybe when they tell you that they are the #1 player in the market, you've done your research, you've been on Google, and you found that loads of people sell the same thing. Sometimes at a higher price, sometimes at a lower price, but you know your market. Knowledge is power in negotiating. I've got a great tip for you today when you're buying a business and when you're negotiating with a seller, when you're dealing with a seller. Quite often, sellers don't drive the sale of their business very well. In fact, actually, they take a little bit of a backseat. They depend upon you to drive the sale. Now, if there's a broker, the broker's job is to drive the sale, but if there's no broker and it's just you and the seller, you need to maintain communication. And what I would strongly suggest that you do is that you have the seller's mobile number rather than just their office number, the seller's personal email address rather than their work email address, and you maintain an ongoing communication. The ongoing communication might be, I know that our accountant was doing due diligence with you today. I hope everything went well. Were you okay with everything? And you might text them or call them every couple of days so that you're maintaining this ongoing communication. Otherwise, what can happen is the ball is dropped, the seller thinks you're not interested, therefore they lose interest, and the whole deal topples and falls over, and everyone has wasted their time and you've missed out on an opportunity. So today's tip, honest, open, ongoing communication. This one is about getting all of the decision makers present. Now, you see, what typically happens with an amateur deal maker is when they're talking to someone on the phone, they assume that the person they're talking to is the decision maker. They assume that they are the 100% shareholder. And quite often, it's actually a minority shareholder who's been sent off with the mission of selling the business. And you need to find out who are the owners, who are you dealing with, who are you talking to, and you need to get everyone around the table to make sure they're all aligned. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 partners and one partner doesn't want to sell. It's not your job to convince them. If you have a reluctant seller, you have a torturous deal, it could fall apart at the last minute, it can cost you time and money. So you need to find out who is actually selling to you, and you sit down with all the sellers and make sure that they are aligned and they all want to exit the business. That's very, very important. And here's a great idea for you that you might find works incredibly well when you're buying your next business. And this is the concept. The concept is you make 2 offers. So instead of coming back with one offer, which can be rejected or turned down, you're actually offering 2 offers, and they have to look at both and say, which one of these would you prefer? Or maybe we do a mix and match. So instead of it being a binary decision, yes, I want it, no, I don't, and most people are cautious and they like to reject the first offer, you actually give them 2 offers. So you speed up the acquisition process, which saves everyone time and money, and it means that you reach the deal faster because you're saying, look, we've got 2 offers, this one here and this one here, and maybe it's a blend of the 2. So let's sit down and work out which elements of each offer work for you so we can get to the outcome that you and I want as quickly and as stress-free as possible. So today's tip is never go into a meeting without an agenda. Let me tell you what I mean. So you've had an initial phone call with a seller, you're now going to be meeting them face-to-face, and when you arrive at the meeting, you pull out of your case an agenda, and you have several copies, and you give a copy of the agenda to everyone in the meeting on your side of the table and on their side of the table, and you say, I've prepared an agenda to keep us on track to make the very best use of our time because I know that you are busy. And no one can ever deny that. No one says they've got plenty of time to waste. So I know that you're busy, I've prepared an agenda, and the agenda is all the things that you want to discuss, and at the very end there's the any other business. So we go through the agenda and you take notes, like anyone in a meeting should do. You take notes, you write down what they say, and people are more likely to tell you the truth if they know that you are writing down what they say. Very important tip that. So you're getting 2 tips in one here. And then when you get to the any other business part of the agenda, that's when everyone relaxes and they can say all the things that they haven't said. And a great question to ask is there a question that I should ask you that I haven't asked you yet? Is there a question I should ask you that I haven't asked you yet? You sit back, you listen. So to go into every meeting with an agenda. The tip is you never ever talk about money on the phone. You only ever talk about money face to face. Sometimes a seller tries to draw you out on the phone and tries to get you to make an offer or to talk about value. Those conversations are always best done face to face. Don't talk about money on the phone. Talk about everything else, but never talk about money on the phone. Save that for the face to face meeting. What I'm going to tell you today is probably against your nature if you are entrepreneurial, And my top tip for today is that patience is a virtue. If you can be patient when buying a business, you will get a better and more considered and a better thought through deal. It's so easy when we see something that we like to rush a deal, to agree to things that we would never agree to normally because we want it. Patience is a virtue. You might be concerned that if you don't move quickly, the deal won't be there and someone else will get it. Well, so be it. There are plenty of deals out there when you know where to look. So today's top tip, patience is a virtue. Take everything slowly, take everything calmly, don't rush, you'll get a better deal and you'll make more money. Today, we're talking about presenting yourself professionally. And I think there's some things that you have to do, you must do in order to be taken seriously. You need to be presented professionally in order for someone to listen to you and for someone to consider that their company is in safe hands if they should sell it to you. And one way of doing this is to make sure that your personal appearance matches what people expect. So if people expect you to wear a suit, then wear a suit, wear a jacket, wear a tie, wear a shirt, whatever it is that builds the rapport with the market that you're working in. The next thing is to get a business card, so that one of the first things you do at the meeting is you slide your business card across the table. And you just got to sound right, you've got to look right, and you've got to have the confidence that comes with knowing that you're going to be working professionally with this person. And presenting yourself in a professional way isn't just about what you say, the way you say it, the way you dress, the way you shake their hand. It's also about using the right language. It's about replying to emails quickly. It's about being responsive. It's about doing all the things that add up to someone being a professional. And if you do that, you'll get a more professional deal. If you come across as an amateur, then people will not take you seriously. You won't get any deals. You'll wonder why it is. And the real reason is you're not acting like a professional. Now, if you found out the real motivations of the seller, if you found out why they really want to sell, and why they want to sell to you, and why they want to sell now rather than later, you found out what those motivations are, you can craft an offer that fulfills those desires. So let's say, for example, it's not about the money, it's more about the freedom, it's about speed of transaction, it's about being able to not come to the office anymore, and you can make sure that your deal has an emotional foundation, not just a financial one. And this is where you get a more successful win-win. If you just let it be about the money, then it becomes a financial transaction, which is a lot less emotional. What we want to do is we want to tap into the emotions of why someone is selling. We want to leverage those emotions so that we actually give the seller what they want. Now, you've got to remember, when you're buying a business and someone's selling you their business, it's not all about the money. It's very easy to think that a seller just wants money, but research has shown that actually money comes quite a way down in someone's priorities. Quite often it's they want to get rid of stress, they want to get more time, they want to spend more time at home, they're under pressure from their partner to spend more time with the family, to not be at the business. Maybe the business has just become stressful. Maybe over the years they've done well, there's been financial pressure because of the economy, maybe new competitors, maybe the internet has been something they've never really embraced, and as a result their sales have suffered. But when you understand why someone wants to sell, then you have a far happier transaction because you're going to be working with the seller to help them achieve what they want. And remember, it's not all about the money. And here's one that you're going to like because it de-risks your situation. It means that you don't have to have millions of pounds in the bank to buy a business, and this is the key to buying a business on a no money down basis, and this is to structure your payments so that you do not put any cash in yourself. And that's really important, because if you bought every business by spending your own savings and spending your own money, then soon you're going to run out of money, which means you're going to run out of the ability to do deals. But if you structure no money down deals, and it's not always possible, so you might have to go through several processes, several different companies to find the deal where you can structure a no money down deal. Then if I ask you the question, if you could buy a business without putting in any of your own money and it becomes self-funding, how many businesses would you buy? The answer is all of them, because why wouldn't you? So you must become very good at structuring no money down deals. Now, here's a great tip when you're talking to a seller about money, about valuation, what they think the business is worth. Here is the question that you ask, and you ask this question word for word like I'm going to say it to you now. The question is, help me understand how you reach that valuation. Help me understand how you reach that valuation. Then you just shut up and you listen and you take notes. And when people have to explain a valuation, the number that they thought of because that was their retirement figure, or the number that just popped into their head, or a nice round number where they thought that was going to be a fantastic payday if they sold the company for that amount, when they have to analyze it, so you don't analyze it, when they have to analyze it and break it down, they really struggle. And that's when you're writing it down and say, okay, so we realize that you're saying that the assets is worth this, and the goodwill is this, and you're saying the website's worth this, and this machinery is worth this, and this office is worth this, whatever it might be. Help me understand how you reach that valuation. Today, we're going to talk about the 151 rule. Now, the 151 rule is where you have built up a small portfolio of 6 businesses, and across the course of a year, you sell one business, you keep 5, and then you buy another one to replenish your stock, to replenish your portfolio, so you always have 6. But what this means is that you can sell one every year, so you have a capital event every year, so you have an influx, a large influx of money every year, but you will replenish your portfolio with another business. So you're only buying one a year once you've got to your 6. You're buying one a year, you're selling one a year, and it's very, very simple to do, but it means you've always got a portfolio of 6 cash-producing assets. One creates a capital event, so a big money exit, and then you buy another one to replace that one. So remember, the 151 rule is a great rule to follow. Now, I meet a lot of deal makers who talk to me about buying distressed businesses. So businesses that have got themselves in a little bit of trouble, businesses where they maybe aren't doing as well as they used to be. Now, let me give you a different way of looking at this. Instead of looking for distressed businesses, why don't you look for a distressed business owner? So the business is absolutely fine, but the business owner is stressed, has had enough, wants to get out. So change your thinking. Don't look for distressed businesses, look for distressed business owners. And I'm going to give you a little negotiating tip here, which I think you'll love because it's so easy to do. And you don't have to use this when you're buying a business. You can use this in any situation. You can use it in a shop. You can use it when buying a car. You can use it when buying a house. And we call it the flinch. The flinch is when someone says a price, or they name the value that they think they've placed on the business, or the number that they're looking for. Whatever they say, whatever the number is, you go like this. You go, and you look uncomfortable, and you take an intake of breath, and you suck that breath in. You go, you flinch. You go, you physically move, and you make sure that they see you flinch. You want them looking at you when you're doing this. You go, and you know what? As soon as you do that, the price in their head that they think they're going to get drops. You start to undermine their valuation. And a very weak negotiator, and most people are weak negotiators because they haven't learned this stuff, they're doing it as amateurs, a weak negotiator will immediately mentally drop the price, and within seconds drop the price and say, well, you know what, maybe we can do a deal, maybe that is a little bit high, yeah, I know something, my partner did say that was a high amount, I'd be prepared to negotiate. And when you hear that, the flinch, has done it all for you. So you can do it, everyone can do it. It's a great tip. Start using the flinch immediately. And sometimes when you're meeting with a seller, it depends on the rapport that you've got, but sometimes things can get a little bit tense, especially if they bring someone else into the meeting and that person doesn't have the rapport with you, and maybe they don't like you very much, they don't want to do the deal as enthusiastically as the seller does. Maybe it's the FD or the office manager, or someone who thinks that maybe they will lose out as a result of the business being sold, and it can get all a little bit tense and no one knows quite what to do, and it becomes a bit awkward and a bit embarrassing. This is my top tip. My top tip is, let's take a 5-minute break. All you have to do is say, let's take a 5-minute break. I'm going to go outside. I've got some calls to make. Go and walk around the block, get some fresh air. They'll calm down. They'll have a conversation. And when you say, let's have a 5-minute break, it releases all the tension in the room. And when you release all the tension in the room, everyone comes back together and they've had an opportunity to talk. And maybe the thing that you were getting stuck on, they've agreed between them. The seller has said to his FD, look, I want you to agree to this because I want to do this deal. Please don't be so awkward. Otherwise, Jonathan might walk away. Because remember, they always know that you've got another deal Jonathan might walk away. So the 5-minute break is the tension releaser. Today's tip is all about understanding why someone is selling, and it's the most powerful question you can ask a seller, and you should ask it in the very, very first conversation, and you should ask it in subsequent conversations, because the answer typically changes over time. But what you want to discover is why they want to sell. You want to find out whether it's retirement, you want to find out whether it's spending more time with the children or the grandchildren, you want to find out whether they want to move abroad, you want to find out what are the stresses and strains that they're under that they want to get away from. So you've got to find the reason why, because what you will discover is that money is not the main motivator for someone selling their business. But when you understand the motivation, you can craft a deal that satisfies that motivation, and therefore you get a happier deal, you get a faster outcome and a better outcome. This tip about buying businesses is all about understanding the time scale of the seller and finding out whether there are any deadlines or any situations which are putting pressure on the time scale. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, the seller is emigrating and they're moving abroad. They've got the flight booked to Australia and they're going to be leaving on a certain date, so they have to do the deal before then. Very useful when you know those time scales, because it allows you to manage your time and either work very quickly or work at a slower pace. But understanding the time scales also means that you understand the motivation of the seller to get a deal done. And when the other side wants to get a deal done quickly, they end up with a worse deal and you end up with a better deal. This tip today is all about understanding what is being sold. So are you going to be sold the shares of the company? Do you want to buy the shares? Are you going to be sold the assets? Is it a sole trader, in which case it's far harder to extract the assets from a sole trader, because a person, an individual, owns those assets, owns the business. So you've got to understand what is being sold, and sometimes sellers don't tell you the whole story and they present everything to you. And then you discover that in actual fact the business is split across several companies, and they're selling you the least desirable one, where actually you want the most desirable one, or they're selling off the bad bit of the business and they want to keep the good bit. So big tip here, you need to find out what's being sold, who you're buying from, and then you can have a more successful acquisition. Let's say you're with a seller who is has a business that you have an interest in, but they are slightly suspicious of you. They're not entirely sure whether they're going to get a great deal with you. Are you going to waste their time? You can feel that they are a little bit cautious of you. Well, why don't you get a reference? You say, look, why didn't you speak to Mr. Smith? I bought Mr. Smith's business last year, and Mr. Smith will tell you how he did the deal. Mr. Smith, I'll ask him to be very open with you, and he'll tell you what it was like working with me, and he'll tell you that I was fair, and that's a really important word, fair. He will tell you that I was fair. And if you have done a great deal with Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith thought you were fair, and Mr. Smith is your reference, then you get Mr. Smith's phone number, they'll phone Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith will say, yeah, I did a deal with Jonathan, you know what, he was very fair. And that's the word that he'll use, that's the word that you use, and as a result, they now then relax, because they realise they're not going to be taken advantage of, you're not going to mess them around, you're not going to waste their time, and that's really, really important to people. So use previous deals that you've done as a reference. All you need to do is do one deal, and from that moment onwards, that great deal can be a reference point for the next seller that you speak to. Now today's top tip is all about finding deals, and one of the very best places to find deals is actually on social media like Facebook and LinkedIn. Now, you may not be a social media person, I'm certainly not, but I know that if I see an opportunity like Facebook and LinkedIn as a way of finding deals, then I'll get used to the idea of having a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page. You don't have to do anything else on the page except use it to find deals. You see, all the businesses are out there using Facebook and LinkedIn, so you should be too. And quite often, it just takes 1 or 2 posts to get people coming to you saying, I'd like to talk to you about selling my business. And I have clients who don't believe it until they try it, and they do it once, they put 1 post on LinkedIn, 1 post on Facebook, and as a result, they get emails and contacts from people who say, yes, I'd love to talk to you about you buying my business. So even if you're not a social media person, why don't you try that out as a great way of finding deals. And here is a great tip when you go into a negotiation. And a negotiation is just a meeting with the seller, and you want to find out what the seller wants, you want to find out what's being sold, but you also need to go in with some idea of the concessions that you'd be willing to make. And maybe this is the second or the third meeting along the line. So by concessions, I mean, what will you give up? Now, the trick here is always to make sure that you don't give up anything without something back in return, but you have to have up your sleeve some things that you're willing to agree to. And the things that you're willing to agree to are things that you found out are important to them. Now, they might be, for example, you're not going to change the company name. You're not going to change the logo because, I don't know, they've had it for 30 years and they love the logo. You're not going to change the location of the business. You're not going to, you're going to keep Marjorie in accounts. You're going to keep the business in the same setting as it is now because it employs people who are local. Now, of course, you can't promise that you aren't going to make changes. I mean, you just can't know what's going to happen in the future. But what you can say is say, well, I can agree to that in the short term. I'm very happy to agree to that. And I tell you something, it will never enter the contract, but the belief that you are conceding, you are giving something, helps them give up something in return, and it doesn't feel like a one-sided process. So I say, well, look, I'm very happy to keep the company name, but you need to give me something in return. What would you be willing to give up for me? Sometimes you reach a sticking point with a seller. They are absolutely determined that the numbers that they've come up with are the numbers that you should be paying or you should be agreeing to, and you don't agree and you've reached different numbers, and you reach that impasse where you're knocking heads, and you don't want to do that because you don't want to fall out with the person who's selling you their business. You want their cooperation. So here's a great way of getting unstuck. What you say is, look, I can see that we're not going to agree on this. I can see that we've been talking about this for a little while and we're going to get stuck on this point. So why don't we bring in an accountant? It can't be your accountant and it can't be my accountant. So we need to nominate a third party. We need to nominate another accountant, and we need to split their fees. You pay half and I pay half, and we'll get them to mediate and to decide which is the right way of doing this. Now, they don't want that. Let me tell you why they don't want it. Number one, it slows down the deal. And every seller, once they've decided to sell, wants the deal to go through as quickly as possible. So they do not want that to happen because it will slow down the deal. Secondly, there's a cost involved. And thirdly, it might not go the way they want. So if they've agreed that this third-party accountant is going to mediate, maybe they might not like the outcome of the mediation. So what it does, it unsticks, it unblocks the situation. So now you say, you know what, we can do this. It's going to cost us time, it's going to take money, but if we can't agree, and suddenly you'll find that the doors of cooperation will open. And it's a great tip, because if you do this, it means that when you do reach that point where you're knocking heads, you unblock the blockage, and you both suddenly get back around the table and you say, look, I'm sure we can sort this out without bringing in a costly third party. Today's tip is all about where is your target market. So let's say you're in the market for buying a business and you've decided what type of business you're looking for. So you've decided on the sector, the industry, the profession. So how do you find people willing to sell you their business in your target market? Well, there are several ways. Let me give you a couple of the top ways of finding people in that target market. The first is to attend trade shows and exhibitions. Pretty much every industry has trade shows and exhibitions that you can buy a ticket to or even go to for free, where you can meet people in that industry and in that profession. And the approach is this. You say, hi, I am someone who's interested in buying a business in this sector, and I'm particularly interested in people who really have had enough of their business and want to move on, and maybe they're frustrated and tired, or they want to move abroad, or they want to spend more time with the family. If you bump into someone who fills those criteria, someone who's like that, then would you mind giving them my business card? And you give them your business card. Now, what typically happens is that half an hour later you bump into that person again and they say, well, you know, when we were talking earlier, I was thinking that maybe we could have a coffee because actually you might be interested in buying my business. Now, they never say that right at the offset. They need to think about it, process it, and then they come back to you. So trade shows and exhibitions is a great way to find people in your target market. Another way is industry publications. Industry publications have a subscriber list. It's either an email subscriber list or it's a postal subscriber list if it's a physical magazine that's sent through the post. And you can buy or more accurately, you can rent that data, and you can rent that subscriber list to send a message to those subscribers saying that you are interested in acquiring a business in that sector. So those 2 tips rolled into one. People ask me all the time, when you're negotiating a deal, Jonathan, where do you do it? So there are 3 places to negotiate a deal. By the way, one place never to do it is on the phone or by email. You never negotiate using the phone or by email, you do it face to face. But there's 3 places face to face that you can do this. You can do this in a location of your choice, so maybe your office. You can do it in a location of their choice, so you could do it at their office, or you could do it in a neutral place like a hotel lobby, a hotel foyer. And I suggest that the neutral place is a great place to start, simply because if the hotel is close to the seller's location, if that meeting goes well, then you can walk around the corner to the seller's office and just see the setup and get a feel for the atmosphere of the business. Now, there are advantages to someone coming to your place, to your office. Maybe they feel a little bit less comfortable, so you might have a slight emotional upper hand there, or you can actually control the environment. You can know where everyone's going to sit, and you can get into the position so that you and your colleagues are there to support you. Or if you do it in their office, maybe they feel more relaxed and they feel more comfortable, but you are slightly at a disadvantage because they control the situation. So big tip, do it in a neutral location, close to the seller's office. And today I want to talk to you about brokers and why there are some businesses that brokers represent that are better to talk to them about than other businesses that brokers represent. So again, if we draw an analogy with estate agents have houses and properties that they have just put onto the market, everyone's very excited about, they're doing lots of viewings, and they also have properties which have been on the market a while, don't get very many viewings. The sellers are frustrated with the agent, and it's exactly the same with businesses. There are businesses just come onto the market, lots of interest, the brokers have that business at the top of their mind, so they're talking up that business, and there are businesses that they've had on their books for maybe a year or more, where the seller is getting annoyed with the broker, getting frustrated, maybe trading has gone down in the last 12 months. Those are the businesses you should be speaking to a broker about, not the shiny new ones that have just come onto the market where everyone's talking top value. What you want to be talking to the broker about is the businesses they've got on the market that haven't sold, because maybe you can help and maybe you can have a solution for that seller. It's a little bit more creative than just writing a check, but those are the businesses you need to be talking to, and those are the businesses you need to be asking the broker about. So today I want to talk to you about business brokers, and there are good things about business brokers. We'll be discussing some of the good things about business brokers in this series, and there are negative things about using a business broker that aren't always helpful. We'll be talking about those as well. But let me give you one of the very good reasons why you should be using a business broker, because they can save you a lot of time. The time they save you is because before the business comes to market, before the broker lists it, before they actually make it publicly available, they may have done at least 6 months of background work, putting together financials, putting them into what's called a data room, and doing a lot of legwork. And sometimes getting financials and information out of a business owner is like pulling teeth. So the business broker has actually done a lot of the hard work for you, and they've presented it maybe a little too positively, but they presented it in such a fashion that you've got it all there in one place. And that's a great time saver. So when you use a broker, you know that they've done a lot of legwork. And today I want to talk about why brokers can mess up a deal for you. Actually, there's several reasons why a broker can mess up a deal for you. Sometimes, and most times actually, the broker has been paid some sort of fee, can be tens of thousands of pounds in advance. So in actual fact, their motivation for pulling a deal over the line is probably pretty low. Now, they'd never admit it, and they would always deny it, but it's a fact. Call me cynical, but I believe it to be absolutely true. And they will say that their real money is made on the percentage, the success fee that comes as a percentage of the sales value. Well, in actual fact, they can't count on that. What they can count on is the upfront fee that has been paid by the person listing their business. Now, the reason a broker can mess up a deal is because to get that upfront listing fee, they have possibly been so positive about the potential sale value of the business, they've elevated that value in the mind of the seller to the point that the seller now has very unrealistic expectations as to what the price, the value of the business is. So when you come along with more realistic expectations, the two of you don't meet very well. So in actual fact, the broker can do the seller a disservice.
One of the big reasons why people want to buy other businesses, want to acquire businesses, is because their organic growth is so slow. So maybe this year's sales look a little bit like last year's sales, and if this year's sales are less than last year's sales, you've got to pedal even faster just to stand still. However, when you acquire businesses, you take huge kangaroo hops where organic growth is the equivalent of a little bunny hop. And sometimes the bunny's hopping backwards as well. So by taking these kangaroo leaps, you suddenly become a bigger and more successful business overnight. So if you've been thinking about buying a competitor or buying a similar business or putting them together, then it's an amazing strategy for growth and one I would highly recommend. So today we're going to answer the question, why should someone sell you their business? Why would they sell it to you? You know, if you're just an individual, you're not a big company, why would they sell it to you? Why would they take you seriously? Well, actually, one of the very good reasons why people would sell it to you is because it's you. They like you. They've built rapport with you. And you're not a big company. You are an individual. And people like that. People appreciate that. But why would someone sell you their business in the first place? Well, typically, they want to sell you their business because they don't want to run the business anymore. And your job is to uncover why someone doesn't want to run their business anymore, find out what motivates them, and then construct a deal that helps them achieve what they want, which is to get out of their business, and helps you achieve what you want, which is to acquire their business. And do not have any concern whatsoever about being an individual. I've done deals with huge businesses, hundreds of millions of pounds businesses, and done it without a business card. So why should someone sell to you? It's because they like you, and it's because they want to do business with you, and you can solve the problem that they have got.
Today, I want to focus your mind on not just finding a business that's right for you to buy, but finding a seller who is primed to sell. So what you're looking for is a motivated seller. What you're looking for is someone who wants to get out of their business and wants to get out sooner rather than later. And even better than that, somebody wants to get out sooner and there's a deadline that they want to hit to get out. So they want to get out by Christmas, get out by Easter, get out by their birthday, get out by the school holidays, get out as soon as possible, get out by yesterday. So you're looking for someone who's motivated to sell. Now, why would someone be motivated to sell? Let me give you the top reasons. The top reason is, in fact, retirement. They have had enough of the business and they've earned good money from it over the years. Maybe they've got another business. They've built up some property and they've got a passive income from the property, and they just want to retire, and they could close the business down or they could pass it to you. So that's one option. Another reason why you might have a motivated seller is ill health, either their own or someone in their family. A motivated seller might be someone who's emigrating, who's looking to move abroad and wants to do it as soon as possible, and you can help them solve that problem by taking over their business. Now, whatever the motivation is, once you understand the motivation, you can help craft a deal that matches that motivation so that you can help them, and as a result, you get the business that you want. So finding the motivated seller and the motives for the seller being motivated is a very, very important part of deal making.